Night always fell heavier on the colony's outer edge. The wind carried dust, broken metal, and the whispers of creatures that lived far beyond the safety beams. Most humans did not step outside after sunset. They locked their doors, checked their alarms, and tried not to think about the ruins that surrounded them. But Elias was different. He was not a soldier. He was not brave. He did not carry a gun. He was just a simple engineer who fixed broken machines. Yet that night he wandered too far from the safe light, searching for a missing power cutter that one of the young workers had dropped during repairs. He did not want the boy to be punished, so he had promised to go look for it. The sky above was fully dark when Elias entered the ruined section of the colony. Old metal beams stood like skeletons, and shattered windows watched him like dead eyes. A cold wind brushed against his face as he walked slowly, holding a small flashlight. He muttered to himself, "Just find the tool and go back. Nothing is out here. Everyone exaggerates." But a small part of him did not believe his own words. The colony had stories that kept children awake and adults nervous. Stories of the monster that lived in the ruins. A creature so big its shadow stretched across the ground like a storm cloud. A creature whose roar could freeze a human blood. A creature that hated all living things. Elias didn't want to think about it. He focused on the ground, scanning for the metal cutter. The flashlight beam shook slightly because his hands were trembling. He told himself it was just the cold. Then, something growled. A deep, rumbling sound rolled across the ruins like thunder crawling on the ground. Elias froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned slowly, his breath shaking. Another growl, louder, close. Elias whispered, "No, no, please, not now." He took one step back, and then his foot hit something. He looked down. Not the power cutter. A giant claw mark, fresh, deep, like a knife had scraped through rock. He felt his throat tighten. His body stiffened. Every instinct screamed run, but fear held him still like a cage. The growl came again, this time from behind a broken wall. The shadows there were too thick, too silent, as if swallowing all light. Elias lifted his trembling flashlight and the beam flickered. A massive shape moved in the darkness. Something huge, something breathing hard, something injured. Elias' breath caught in his chest. From the shadow, two golden eyes opened. Not normal golden, glowing, burning, alive. They stared at him with a mixture of anger and pain. The creature stepped forward, each movement shaking the broken floor. Elias saw thick armor-like skin, long spines across its back, razor-sharp claws, everything the stories described. The creature everyone feared. Elias stumbled backward, his flashlight dropping from his hand. It rolled on the ground, spinning the beam wildly, growled again and lowered its body as if ready to attack. Elias pressed his back against a broken metal pillar. His voice cracked. "Please, please don't kill me." It was the first word that came out of his mouth, please. He didn't shout it. He didn't command it. He whispered it like a man standing on the edge of death. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something impossible occurred. His body stopped moving. Its claws remained in the air. It blinked slowly, as if hearing something it had never heard before. The growl softened. The creature tilted its head slightly, confused. Elias felt hot tears fill his eyes. His voice was shaking but sincere. I won't hurt you, just let me go, please." The creature's eyes softened. The monster everyone feared lowered its massive head. Not in threat, not in preparation to strike, but gently, almost respectfully. Elias' breath broke. His fear slowly melted into something else, something he could not understand. Curiosity, sadness, a strange connection. The nightmare of the colony stood in front of him, not as a monster, but as a wounded being. Elias took a careful step forward. The creature did not move. It only breathed, heavy and tired, as if waiting for something. And that night, in the ruins where no human dared to walk, a human and a feared creature looked into each other's eyes for the first time, with no hate, no violence, only a single, fragile moment of understanding. Elia's heart pounded so hard it hurt his chest. The creature's golden eyes were fixed on him, unblinking, intelligent, and alive. He had expected a monster, a killer, but what he saw now was something different, something wounded, tired, afraid. The stories the colonists told were not wrong, but they were incomplete, was terrifying. But it was also suffering. The first thing Elias noticed was the deep gash along its leg. Dark blood had dried around the wound, but a fresh cut glistened in the pale moonlight. A metal shard, twisted and sharp, stuck out from the creature's thick hide like a knife. Every instinct screamed to step back, but his hands moved on their own. He wanted to help. He had to. He swallowed hard and whispered, almost trembling, I can help you. His head tilted slightly, slow and deliberate. Its eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with caution. Elias knew he had only one chance. One word, one act could determine if he lived or died. He whispered again, barely audible, please. The creature froze. The air around them seemed to hold its breath. The wind stopped. Even the distant night sounds of the ruins went silent, and then the impossible happened. Lowered its head further, almost bowing. It did not roar. It did not lunge. It simply let the human move closer. Elias stepped forward, trembling, his eyes locked on the glowing golden gaze. Each step was a battle against fear, but he forced himself to breathe. Hold still, Elias said softly, trying to sound calm even though his voice quivered. He reached out with one hand and touched the twisted metal shard. The creature flinched slightly, but it did not attack. Its massive body shivered, but it stayed in place, letting him remove the shard. When he finally pulled it free, blood welled from the wound. Growled, deep, low, painful, Elias flinched, expecting the worst. But then carefully he cleaned the wound with water from his bottle. The creature watched, silent, still tense, but not threatening. Elias tore a piece of his jacket and pressed it gently against the injury. Shifted, its claws digging into the ground, but it did not move away. It allowed him to wrap the cloth around its leg to stop the bleeding. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Elia's fear faded slightly, replaced by awe. He realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. This creature, feared by every human in the colony, was capable of trust. It had chosen him, one small human, over fear and instinct. "You're hurt," Elias whispered. "I won't hurt you, you can trust me." Tilted its massive head again, as if trying to understand the strange sound of kindness. Its golden eyes softened. Elias reached up cautiously, running a hand along its rough, scaly snout. The creature inhaled sharply, not in aggression, but in understanding. And then, in a gesture Elias could hardly believe, pressed its forehead gently against his chest. Its massive body shook slightly from exhaustion and pain, but it stayed still. Elias felt a shiver run through him. For the first time, he truly understood the stories were not complete. It was not a monster that hated humans. It was something living, intelligent, and capable of emotion, something the colonists had never tried to understand. Hours passed. Elias cleaned the wound, spoke softly, and tended to the creature. Outside, the colony slept, unaware of the bond forming in the darkness. He whispered to it, telling it about small things, about the colony, about the boy who lost his tool, about how people feared it without reason. Listened, its chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Finally, Elias took a step back, exhausted but smiling. "You'll be okay," he said softly. "I'll make sure no one hurts you." Made a sound, low and almost like a sigh. It pressed its head against his chest one last time before moving a step back. The glow in its eyes seemed to dim, not because it was angry, but because it had found something it had never known, someone who cared. Elias looked into those golden eyes and realized something amazing. The monster everyone feared, the creature that had terrorized stories and nightmares, was not evil. It was alone. It was hurt. And it had just allowed a human, a small, fragile human, to show it kindness. For the first time in its life, felt understood. And for the first time, Elias realized that sometimes fear could hide the truth, and that one small word said with courage could change everything. He whispered again, this time with certainty, "You're not alone." And wounded, massive, terrifying, and beautiful, lowered its head in a way no one in the colony would ever believe. Elias spent the rest of the night beside, sitting quietly while the creature rested its massive body against a broken wall. The gash in its leg had slowed its breathing, but it was alive, and that was what mattered most. He had never been this close to anything so large, so powerful. Every detail amazed him. The ridges along its back, the way its claws flexed with careful strength, the soft, golden glow of its eyes in the darkness. Yet despite all its terrifying features, there was something fragile about it, a wounded giant who had never known kindness. For a long while, neither moved. Elias whispered softly, telling the creature stories of the colony, of people who feared it without understanding. Listened, tilting its head, breathing slowly as if absorbing every word. There was no roar, no sudden attack, just quiet trust. It was a trust that no human had ever received before, a trust that made Elias feel both awed and terrified. By midnight, Elias had used strips of cloth and water from his bottle to cover the wound as best he could. He kept speaking gently, encouraging the creature to relax, assuring it that he meant no harm. Each time he reached out to touch its massive snout or run a hand along its scales, flinched slightly, then stayed still. It was as if it was learning to believe in humans again. "You don't have to fight anyone tonight," Elias whispered. "No one's going to hurt you here, I promise." Its golden eyes softened, and it pressed its head against his chest again. Elias felt the creature's warmth, its massive heartbeat vibrating through his body. He could hear its slow, heavy breathing, smell its earthy scent, and feel a deep connection forming between them. It was an unspoken understanding. He had helped it when no one else had. It had accepted him when everyone else had feared it. Time passed slowly. The ruins were silent except for the wind and the occasional distant cry of animals. Elias found himself talking about small things, the human world, the colony, even his own fears and loneliness. Listened. Sometimes it tilted its head, sometimes it let out a low growl, not of anger, but of acknowledgement. The creature seemed to recognize that the human beside it was different from all the others. Elias paused for a moment and watched carefully. "You're not just a monster," he said softly. "You're more than anyone believes, you're alive, you feel, and you deserve someone who understands." For the first time, moved in a way that surprised Elias. It lowered its massive front paw, letting him place his hand gently on it. The creature flinched at first, then relaxed. It was the first contact they had shared without fear. Elias smiled, despite the fear still fluttering in his chest. This giant, terrifying creature had allowed him to touch it. It had let a human, so small and fragile, show it compassion. Hours passed like this. Elias rested on the broken floor, leaning against the wall while lay beside him. He thought about the colony, about the stories, about how everyone had feared this creature for generations. And yet, here he was, sharing a silent bond with it, feeling its warmth, hearing its slow, rhythmic breathing. Something inside Elias changed. He realized that fear had always been stronger than understanding. People had judged without seeing it, without knowing its pain. And now, by speaking one small word, please, he had broken through its defenses. He had touched its heart. By dawn, shifted its massive body, stretching slowly but carefully to avoid hurting itself. Elias helped it balance, whispering instructions and offering support. The creature seemed to recognize him not as a threat, but as a friend, as someone who had earned its trust. Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest, an unexplainable joy, a sense of connection that went beyond fear, danger, or even life itself. He looked into its golden eyes and whispered, "You're not alone anymore. I'll be here for you." Pressed its forehead against his chest again, and Elias felt a shiver run through him. It was a gesture of trust, of acceptance, of something deeper than fear or power. In that moment, the bond between human and creature became undeniable. Elias knew, as he sat there beside him in the ruined darkness, that the stories were wrong. The creature everyone feared was not a mindless monster. It was alive. It felt. And it had chosen him, the smallest, weakest human, as someone worthy of its trust. By the time the first rays of sunlight touched the ruins, Elias were no longer just a human and a feared creature. They were companions, united by courage, compassion, and a fragile bond that neither time nor fear could break. For the first time, Elias realized that one small act, one whispered word, had changed everything. And the creature everyone feared had shown him a truth that would remain forever. Sometimes, even the strongest beings only need a little kindness to believe in the world again. By morning, the ruins were quiet except for the faint sound of wind moving through broken metal beams. Elias had spent the entire night with, tending its wound and forming a fragile bond that no human had ever imagined possible. But the sun rising over the colony brought a new kind of fear, one he could not escape. Word spreads fast in a small colony. When Elias failed to return the previous night, whispers began. Where is he? What was he doing near the ruins? By dawn, rumors had grown into fear, and fear had grown into panic. Soldiers and civilians alike murmured the worst stories. He went to the ruins, one worker said, voice trembling. Near. The soldiers' faces turned pale. The very mention of the creature everyone feared made their stomachs twist. Impossible, one commander said. No human survives that place. He must be dead, or worse, the monster has him. Elias, exhausted but relieved, returned to the edge of the colony. His clothes were torn, his hands scratched and bloody, and his mind raced. He hadn't thought of the reaction of others. He only thought about helping the wounded creature who had allowed him to show it kindness. But the moment he stepped into view, chaos erupted. Soldiers surrounded him, pointing their weapons. "Step back," shouted the commander. "Stand away from him. He is dangerous. The creature, he's in league with it." Elias tried to speak, raising his hands. "No, he's not dangerous. He's hurt. He needed help." The soldiers didn't listen. Fear had made their hearts deaf to reason. The colony had spent generations terrified of, and one human daring to bond with it was considered madness. "Contain him," one shouted. Others moved forward, herding Elias toward a supply cell at the edge of the colony. He protested, struggling to explain, but the soldiers' minds were already closed. They locked him inside and bolted the door. Alone, Elias sank to the floor, exhausted and frustrated. His heart ached, not from the fear of being locked up, but from the worry about. Was the creature still in the ruins? Had it seen him being taken away? Had it felt abandoned? Elias closed his eyes and whispered, "I'll find you again, I promise." Outside the cell, the colony buzzed with panic. Children were kept inside, and adults whispered prayers. The stories of once just tales to frighten the young now became real in their minds. The idea that someone had approached it and that it had lowered its head to a human was incomprehensible. Fear turned to anger. "We should destroy it," some cried. Others nodded, their imaginations filled with images of the monster rampaging. Elias thought about what he had seen that night. Was not a mindless monster. It had allowed him to help. It had trusted him. It had lowered its head to a human, something no human had ever witnessed. It was not evil. It was alive, intelligent, and wounded. But no one would believe him. Fear blinded the colony, and the people only saw a monster waiting to strike. Elias' chest tightened. He wanted to shout to explain, but he was trapped behind steel bars. All he could do was hope that remembered him, that it knew he meant no harm. Meanwhile, in the ruins, watched the colony from a distance. Its golden eyes glowed in the morning light. It had felt Elias' absence immediately. The creature's massive body trembled, not in anger, but in worry. Its trust had been fragile, and now the human it had accepted was taken away by others who feared it. Growled softly, a low, rolling sound that carried through the ruins. It was not a roar of rage. It was a sound of concern, a silent question. "Where are you?" Back in the cell, Elias pressed his hands against the cold metal. "I'll be okay," he whispered. "But I need you to be safe too. Please wait for me." No one outside knew what was happening in the ruins. No one understood that the creature they had feared for generations had just saved a human, and that the human had saved it in return. The bond between them was invisible to everyone else, hidden in the quiet moments of understanding, trust, and compassion. Hours passed slowly. Soldiers continued to patrol, and rumors spread like wildfire. But in the distance, a shadow moved silently among the broken walls, watching Elias. Had not left. It had not forgotten. And deep inside, the creature understood something that the colony could not. Sometimes fear hides the truth, and sometimes the smallest acts of courage and kindness can create bonds stronger than terror itself. Elias closed his eyes, exhausted, but somewhere inside him hope remained. And in the ruins, waited, watching, breathing, and ready to act when the moment came. Elias had barely rested when the alarm screamed across the colony. Bright red lights flashed on every wall, and sirens pierced the air like knives. His heart jumped. Something was wrong, something very wrong. Through the small barred window of the supply cell, Elias could see the chaos. Smoke rose in thick clouds, twisting around the ruined metal buildings. Explosions shook the ground, throwing dust and debris into the air. The colony was under attack. From a distance, he saw shapes moving, tall, armored, and vicious. The raiders from a neighboring sector, ruthless and merciless. They did not care about the colony's defenses. They only wanted destruction. Soldiers ran in panic, firing wildly, but there were too many enemies. Elia's stomach sank. He had never imagined the colony would face something like this. Then, through the smoke, Elias saw something that made his heart leap. A massive shadow moved among the ruins. Golden eyes glowed in the morning light, the creature. Even through the chaos, it was calm, powerful, and aware. It had come for him. It had not left, had not forgotten. And now, in this moment of danger, it was going to act. The first warrior stepped into the open, swinging a jagged weapon. Roared. The sound was more than terrifying, it was commanding. Trees and metal beams trembled. The ground shook under the creature's massive feet. Elias pressed himself against the wall of the cell, terrified and awed. The laughed, a human and a monster. How cute, one shouted. You'll die together. Did not answer with words. It moved. Its massive claws ripped through the ground and debris, sending warriors flying. Its tail smashed into walls, collapsing structures that threatened to harm Elias. Every movement was precise, controlled, and devastating. Elias' chest swelled with awe. The creature everyone feared was saving him, defending him, acting not out of instinct, but out of trust. Elias shouted through the chaos. It's helping us, get back! Soldiers hesitated, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some froze in fear, others dropped their weapons, staring at the enormous creature tearing through their attackers, roared again, and even the flinched. The battlefield became silent for a heartbeat as everyone realized this monster was not an enemy. Elias' fear turned to hope. He knew he had to reach the front to be near to help if he could. He pushed against the bars of the cell and burst out into the open. Smoke and dust swirled around him. Explosions rocked the ground. And through it all, moved with grace and power, shielding him, deflecting attacks, crushing the without killing indiscriminately. The colonists watched in awe. The monster they had feared for generations was saving the very humans who had despised it. Elias ran beside it, small and fragile, but feeling stronger than he ever had. He realized something he had always believed deep down. Courage was not measured by size or strength. Courage was measured by the heart. Paused, turning its massive head to check on him. Elias waved frantically, pointing at the wounded and trapped colonists. Understood immediately, roaring again, moving faster, smashing through debris to reach them. Every step was thunderous, yet careful, avoiding unnecessary destruction. Hours passed in a blur of fire, smoke, and chaos. They had underestimated and the determination of the colonists. Slowly, they began to retreat, battered and terrified. Stood tall in the ruins, breathing heavily, golden eyes glowing with vigilance. Elias approached, panting, mud and soot covering him, but his heart swelling with gratitude and amazement. He reached up and placed a hand on its massive snout. The creature lowered its head, allowing him to touch it. You saved us, Elias whispered. Thank you, I knew you were not a monster. Pressed its forehead gently against his chest. Elias felt its warmth, its trust, its loyalty. The creature had risked everything for a human, one human who had spoken a single word, please. That word had changed everything. The colony was silent. The survivors stared at the ruins, at the creature standing beside the human who had dared to trust it. Fear and awe mixed in their hearts. They could not deny what they had witnessed. The monster was not evil. It was powerful, yes, but it was loyal, intelligent, and capable of understanding. Elias looked at, feeling something deep inside him. He realized that sometimes the smallest gestures, the gentlest words, could inspire courage even in the largest, most feared beings. Had protected him not because it was forced to, but because he had shown it respect and kindness. And in that ruined, smoky battlefield, Elias understood something he would never forget. The creature everyone feared was now their protector. The battlefield was quiet now, but smoke still hung in the air like a heavy curtain. They had fled, leaving behind broken machines, scorched metal, and terrified colonists. Elias stood among the ruins, his chest heaving, mud and dust covering him. His eyes searched for the creature who had saved them all. There it was, towering, massive, golden eyes glowing even through the smoke. Its scales were scratched, its claws stained with debris, and its breathing was heavy, but it stood tall. Despite its wounds, there was an undeniable aura of power and dignity surrounding it. Elias felt small beside it, yet protected. The colonists had gathered behind the safety of broken walls. They stared wide-eyed at the monster they had feared for generations. Some hid, trembling, others whispered prayers, but all were silent, frozen in disbelief. The creature that had haunted their nightmares was standing among them, and it was not attacking. Elias stepped forward slowly, placing himself in front of, "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice carried to the watching crowd. "He saved us. He's protecting us." Lifted its massive head, scanning the colony. It let out a low, rumbling growl, not of anger, but of warning. Its golden eyes fixed on the distant horizon where shadows moved, and the air seemed to tremble with its power. The colonists felt it too, fear mixed with awe in their hearts. Then came the roar. It was a sound that shook the ground, a vibration that rattled metal and dust alike. It was not a roar of hate, not a cry for blood. It was a roar of promise, of protection, of loyalty. This roar declared to the world, no harm will come to this human. No harm will come to this colony. They had seen this roar from a distance and had already fled, but for the colonists, it was a revelation. The creature they had feared, the monster that had haunted their stories, was their guardian. It had chosen to protect them, not destroy them. And it had done so because one human had spoken a single word, please, and shown it kindness when no one else dared. Elias moved closer, hand outstretched, lowered its head, allowing him to touch its rough, scaly snout. The golden eyes softened. Elias whispered, "Thank you, you saved us, you trusted me, and we trust you now." For the first time, the colonists saw it, not as a monster, but as a living, thinking, feeling being. Its body was massive, yes, and terrifying in its strength, but it had a heart. It had chosen to protect, to understand, and to bond with a human who had shown courage and compassion. Slowly, Elias walked among the colonists, showing them that meant no harm. Children peeked from behind walls, and parents whispered, "It's alive, but not evil." One soldier stepped forward cautiously, raising a hand in peace. Watched silently, its golden eyes tracking every movement, ready to protect, but not to strike. The bond between human and creature was undeniable. Elias and shared a silent conversation through gestures, glances, and the quiet understanding that had formed over nights of care and trust. This was more than fear overcome. This was friendship, respect, and loyalty. As the sun rose higher, the ruins glimmered with a soft, golden light. Its massive shadow stretched across the broken buildings, a reminder that power could be tempered by understanding. Elias placed his hand on its head once more. "You're not alone," he whispered, "and neither are we." Responded in the only way it knew how. It pressed its forehead gently against Elias' chest, a gesture of trust and connection. The colonists watched, their fear slowly melting into awe. They had seen the impossible. The monster they feared, the creature everyone avoided, had chosen a human and protected an entire colony. In that moment, something changed forever. The stories of terror would remain, but now they carried a new truth. Courage, kindness, and a single word, spoken softly, sincerely, could reach even the strongest, most feared beings. And the colony would never forget the roar that had saved them, the giant who had lowered its head to a human, and the bond that had changed everything. Elias looked at, gratitude and awe swelling in his chest. "We'll face the future together," he whispered, "you and me." His golden eyes blinked slowly, a silent promise. And for the first time in the colony's history, fear gave way to respect, understanding, and hope. The creature that everyone had feared had become their protector.